And now, from beyond our dimension, this is the JeffMara podcast. Here's Jeff.
My guest is Tom Matt, who after coming out of a dark night of the soul, discovered that he has a unique sci-ability called UPSIGHT vision, which manifests a holographic overlay in his perception. Tom, welcome back. It's great to have you again.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I do. I see holographic images kind of everywhere around me. And it started about 13 years ago after I came out of a severe mental health crisis and some addiction. I've got 13 years sober. That's behind me now. And It's funny, but this ability has stayed with me. And I had two MRIs. You know, I talked to a bunch of neurologists about it because when something like this happens, you always think there's something wrong with the brain. Stroke, lesion tube. I did damage from drug use. There were no physical damages. There was nothing there in the two different MRIs. So I said to them, I said, listen, you got to understand, I'm seeing holographic images everywhere, right? I have to turn my attention and focus on them, and I'll describe what they look like in a minute so everyone gets a clear idea that it's not, in fact, a mind's eye, and it's not hallucinations, which is you think something there and it's not. In any case, the neurologists are like, well, you know, maybe the drugs open something in your brain, but we don't know, right? So this is 12 years ago. I'm like, okay, fair enough. I left the doctors. I'm like, listen, somebody's got to know what is going on. This has got to be some kind of recorded history. Somebody's seeing these kinds of things. And I was going to look for answers, right? I was also going to try to find some academics who would want to study my brain. I could turn my attention to this and bring them up and look at them and change them with a thought. I literally have a conversation, a holographic conversation with this image. Now, since that time, this is a dozen years ago, again, I got 12 years sober, almost 13, I finally found the Institute of Noetic Sciences, Dean Radin and his team in the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I got up there that summer of 2023, and we measured my brain waves while I was doing UPSIGHT vision, right? And while I was using my mind's eye. So we hooked my brain up to an EEG machine, and we would use they would measure it, and so they would bring up an image, let's say the Eiffel Tower. I would think about it as you and I think about something in your mind's eye, and they would measure the brain waves, and then I would see it with UPSIGHT vision. Now there were changes across every single brain state. Right? Now, I thought there were going to be changes across the theta brain state. I thought that was obvious because that's what mediums talk about when they're in communication. That's during lucid dreaming. That's the active state. And that is true. And they were across all of them. But the biggest one was the alpha brain state. Now, if you know anything about the brain states, which I only learned about because I've been studying this, the alpha state is when you're in the default mode network. You're kind of resting. Well, when my brain is actually resting, it's not, you know what I mean, alpha state, it's actually doing a lot of work to see these images. Now, let me tell you when we say holographic images, I want to make sure everyone can understand what I mean by that, because I think it's important. And I'll use two examples, and hopefully everyone's seen at least one of them. About 5 years ago, there was a show on Netflix called The Queen's Gambit. In that show, the protagonist would lay on the bed, and she would see these chess pieces on the ceiling of her room. And she had the ability to move the pieces around with her mind. She was like a chess master, and this is how she worked out what her moves were going to be against different competitors. When I saw that movie, I was like, wow, that is very good representation of it. If you have not seen that movie, most people have seen Iron Man. And when Tony Stark is in his office and he's got this submersive universe around him, it looks like that. It is that specific and detailed. The reason I don't start with that example is because I cannot swipe left and swipe right to bring up another file and look at it, right? Now I can think about another object and it will appear, but I don't have the ability to swipe left or right. So that is what's happening now. And one more thing, and I'll take a pause. If I was to, you and I are talking about this, if I was to look over, you'd think maybe because we're talking about Tony Stark, I would see an image, a holographic image of Iron Man. There's a chance that might happen, but it could be just as easily a chance of two baseball players, a guy pitching in. It doesn't matter. It could be anything related to this or not. Once I engage with it, it's a whole nother game. It's a whole nother, like I say, I'll use conversation. Am I conversing with some other non-human intelligence? Am I conversing with the Akashic record, the noosphere? I call it the organic metaverse. In my book, I called it schizopedia, because there's this trickster element, but there's also a truth to it, like Wikipedia. So yeah, it's been a real interesting journey. And there is a peer-reviewed paper coming out any day now that talks about the study. I mean, I don't know what the journal it's going to be, and it's going to be out any day now.
Does the vision happen to you spontaneously, like all the time, or do you have to engage with it to have it come up for you?
So when you say spontaneous, it's there, right? So it's not in my way. It's not like it's there, so I literally have to turn my attention and focus my eyes. So in other words, maybe we can use an example of a cloud going by, a very light or wispy cloud going by, but once I see it, then I know it's there. And then once I do see it, there's some kind of charge with my brain where I can engage with it. So it does not interfere with my day, right? That's the bigger, most important question. It does not interfere with my day. It does not get in the way of my day.
So you're saying that it's there 24 hours a day, but kind of like in your peripheral vision.
Back of the brain, yeah. Like when I go to bed and I shut my eyes at night, there will be an image. So I've learned to just think about a brook or the side of an ocean, and I can see that and drift off to sleep.
All right.
That's the thing we're talking about.
What do you see right now?
Well, I have to focus my eyes on it. I see a guy on a motorcycle. This is a pretty quick one. There's a guy, and now it's a guy cutting the grass. A motorcycle turned into a lawnmower, and he's cutting his grass.
I guess you don't know where this image is coming from. Is it possible your subconscious is creating this image? Is it a message from your higher self?
So that's a great question. And that's what we did at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I told them when I talked to them that, listen, this image, when it starts, it's outside me, but like like I can hear something, right, from afar. So I can hear that outside, but my voice also is a sound. It responds internally. So where the original one is coming from, I have no idea. Now, we'll talk about this later in the conversation about how I can also pick up other people's biofields. And when I was on your show in February of last year, I wasn't paying attention to this, but now, like, if you and I were in the same room together, I could read and see, if you gave me permission, your upside vision, because you produce it too. I just have to focus on it. And you have to say it's okay for you to look at it. I don't want to say it's eavesdropping, but it kind of is, but it's not your thoughts. Again, I can't read your thoughts, but whatever part of us is receiving and transmitting a message that's coming through you, if I work on it, I can pick that up and see it. And I've been having fun with that lately, and I'm starting to do that, literally just starting to do that within the next week, Jeff. So this is one of the first times I've talked about this.
If I was with you in the same room and I was thinking of something like a cup, right? Could you, and I said you have access to see what I'm thinking about. Could you see that cup, what I'm thinking about?
So no, that's what I cannot do. So I couldn't do that. But what I could do, right, is let's say what you sat next to each other. I look at what's coming from your brain, like it's radiating, like a voice, but it's visual. Now, and I would tell you exactly what I'm seeing. I would explain it to you. Let's say we looked at personal, finance, life, maybe relationships, whatever, kids, family, and some things would come up. Now, maybe it's things that are unconsciously bothering you. Maybe it could be something that's going to happen in the future. Maybe it's something that happened in the past. That's where the fun is going to be, to do this with different people. So the answer is, I don't know. As all I can say is how Jung has the collective unconscious. I think it's picking up through there, and whatever is, I don't want to say bothering you, right? Whatever is affecting you on an unconscious level are the things I think I'm picking up from other people. Now, again, this is so new. There's not a lot of data on working with other people around it, but it's something fun. And we've had some examples of it, but it's an exciting next step in the science or in the study of this, because another thing, and this is really important, Jeff, when I was on the show in February, a woman reached out to me, right? And one of the things I said is that I know I'm not the only one with disability. someone on the live show reached out to me and they got back to, and she said, I have this. We exchanged emails. We had a couple of Zoom calls. And she did have it growing up, but it went away and her mother told her never to tell anyone. Since last February, 14 months, I've received 1,700 emails from people that say they have this ability to one degree or another. I've talked to less than 100 of them. Now, they don't have it like I do, or at least I've not found anyone yet, but I wrote a PDF called The 8 Stages of UPSIGHT Vision, right? Because I did this because people say, hey, I can do this. I'm like, well, that's really not UPSIGHT, but it's adjacent. So people think they have it. They can look at the paper if they want to. It's on my website. They can download it. Because I think other people that have it to the degree I do, and I think it is, I don't want to say evolving, but I do want to say evolving, right? Something is happening on the planet and more people are tuning into this and paying attention to it. If you look at the telepathy tapes, you know what I mean? There's something going on, and I think it's to help us communicate. It helps us survive whatever thing is coming. But there's a communication element, not just internally, but I'm picking up, like I said, from the Akashic record, and like I said, from if you were in the room with me, I could sense or see, not even sense, literally see what is radiating from you.
Before you move forward, I want to ask one more question, and I want to try to see the way you see it. So, for example, if I'm looking at this mug again, I see this mug in full color and normal, you know, how we all would see it. When you see the hologram, is it monochromatic in one color? Is it colorful like what we see in waking consciousness? And is it transparent? Is it solid? Does it look kind of like a computer-like image?
Great question. Typically, and there is a typical, it is like a clear with a color tint, right? Maybe call it translucent with a color tint. I have seen 3 times a full color image and I'm like, wow, that's a full color image of UPSIGHT Vision, but it happened so fast that I could not engage it to see if I could influence it. So that even though it happened, it's not typical. So one color, it's clear. I can see right through all of them for sure. And you can't hold them. That's really important too. These things are not static. Right? Like I said, I told you the motorcycle turned into the lawnmower. The most I've ever held an image of anything is 30, 40, 50 seconds. It just moves slowly. It moves out of whatever it moves out of. It moves out. It moves away from my vision.
When you engage with it, you're always looking to the right, correct?
Yeah, well, I can do it anywhere, but that's just habit. It's everywhere. Birds will fly around my head and outside of the UPSIGHT Vision, and they're gone, and they will come in around it. So there's actually a field that stops somewhere behind me. I don't know where it is.
Well, the reason I ask that is because the right side of your brain picks up raw data, and then the left side creates the story of it. So that's why I was wondering if all of this is coming in to your right side. You're just picking up raw data.
It feels like it's coming in everywhere. It feels like it's holistically. I've explained it like this. It feels like somebody's turned a shower head on of UPSIGHT and just sprayed it up my face, and I've learned how to filter it out. It comes at me like this, which is really interesting. Even though things will go from left to right to right to left, I have this intuitive knowing it's actually coming at me like this too, right? You know how a film goes through a camera? You know, you slides this way, this is coming like this. It's almost like there's a quantum element. And I use that term not loosely. I use that term because there's a quantum element to this that needs to be explored. There's so many things about this that needs to be explored. You know, the question is getting the interest around it.
Have you been able to put it to use in any way?
The first thing I'm doing, as I said, I'm going to be doing readings, but as far as now, I haven't even tried, right? I have not tried to use this other than see what it is, except one thing. The ability to do this is giving me this mathematical ability that I never had before. Now, I'm not a mathematician. I can see these I call myself a visual spatial super ninja, right? I can see any manifold topological space and I can bend it and fold it in my field of vision, right? Anything. I have built this Rulliard, maybe call it that. I call it the Cartesian coordinate system on steroids. I have built this and I've held it in my head for the last, finished it a few years ago. All I need to do is take the energy, effort, and time to get a mechanical engineer to draw it, right? Plot the whole thing and upload to the computer. That will take money and time. And what's the payoff of that? I don't know. I have some ideas, but at some point, that's the most physical, tangible, external thing that I've made from it, but I haven't actually taken the next step. So the answer to your question, other than studying this and communicating in like, let's study this kind of way, not yet, but reading people, I've read people, again, small groups or small individual, not in groups. That's the next step. And I'm literally starting it right now. So the timing on this conversation is topical, Jeff.
Are there any images that are repeating? And if so, is it possible that these are symbols and you just need to map out what they mean?
Okay, so yeah, so when I first started doing it, there was a symbol that always came back, which was a guy lifting weights, right? And I was like, and like, I used to work out, I used to do triathlons. I'm a little older now. So I was like, you know what? I wonder if I start working out, I'll see this, or if it's going to go, if it's going to go away, or if it's going to do something else, right? Once I started doing that, it went away. So you could sit there and say that's a symbol to go work out. It's a nudge to do certain things. And to be clear too, there are nudges, I've done it 12 years. There are other payoffs I've done. I've lived with it. Call it a second kind of intuition, right? A second kind of intuition. So that is the answer that's a symbolic representation. There are other things that happen that are more precognitive, but I cannot control them, right? So let me give you an example. I will see a bridge collapse on Tuesday with Upside Vision. An hour later, I'll go online and a bridge collapses in Ohio. I'm like, oh my gosh, I could have done something to help that. That's ridiculous. That's nonsense. I could also see a bridge collapse the next day and never see a report on that, on where it is. So it's not like I can have control of any other of the sci-abilities. You talked about a sci-ability. I wrote a blog post called, Is Upside Vision a Sci-ability? The answer, I think, is without a doubt, yes. I can do this 100% of the time in a lab under scientific observations. Now, I can't remote view perfectly, right? I can remote view a house, but if you want a house on Smith Lane, this might be on Maple Street, right? I know there's precog elements, I can't control it. I can lucid dream sometimes, but I can't control that. So there's elements, other psi elements related to this that I do not have a good control over, like some people who've studied each of those individually. I kind of play with them, and they're tangential to this or adjacent to it, whatever, but they're not the same.
Many people believe that we live in some sort of simulated reality like the Matrix. Do you think that's possible? And if so, is the upsight vision that you're experiencing somehow peeking behind the curtain?
Yeah, I definitely think that. I think the simulation hypothesis, I think Risberg is a famous MIT professor that wrote about this. I definitely believe there's an element to that. Now, whether the creator created this simulation, that's for another discussion. But there's no doubt there's an intelligence that I am communicating with that has my interests. It seems to have my interests and help me guide me through this process, whatever it is. Now, that matrix is so many layered, it doesn't, how do I say it? Even though it's interested, it's not going to let me win a racehorse, right? It does not, even though it's interested, it's not going to give me everything that Tom thinks he wants. Because I tried that in the beginning, right? I tried to, okay, Kentucky Derby, let's watch the races. I can have a complete image of the Kentucky Derby an hour before, 5 minutes before the race. I will see the whole race, or what looks like the whole race, obviously. And it will show me nothing that actually happens. So I don't know what that is about, but I know this: I should not use it, and I have not tried to do it against or tried to use it for any really short-term gains or anything like that. There's a bigger picture this thing has in mind, but the simulation feels really, really very real, and it feels like I can access parts of it that people typically can also access if they're on DMT. Right? There's a guy that also, I can't think of his name right, Danny Goler. He's got a thing called the code. When he's on DMT, he can see this holographic code coursing through these lasers, right? That to me is part of the matrix too. And we've had a couple of conversations about that, because I think we're both looking at different pieces of the element, the matrix, and it's presenting to us in different ways. Now, how do you prove all this? Until more people can come forward and there's technology, we're just going to have data points. Again, I told you there's a report written from ions using my EEG brain waves, but there's got to be something, there's got to be another way to do it. And I'm sure we'll figure it out in the next few years.
Do you ever see living beings like entities or ETs with the UPSIGHT vision?
Yeah, so another good question. When I first started doing this, one of the first, and we'll call this one remote viewing / astral projecting, right? I'm just sitting there on the couch looking out into this field, and I'm going through the stars. I see this ship, or next thing I see the ship. Let's say I'm on the ship, and I'm on the ship. Again, all of this is hologram, not full color, right? Holographic image you can think of, one color tint, and it's a dozen grays in a circle. Gray aliens that we typically think of grays. They're looking at what looks like a triangle, a clear triangle. And I'm looking at them, looking at this clear triangle, and I'm slowly getting closer. And I look and I realize they're remote viewing. They have a hologram of a town in the US, right? And their big gray eyes are following the people around. And when one person moves from one field of vision to the other grays picks it up. So somehow this circle, 360 degree circle, they were getting complete coverage on this town so they could get a better view of it. So I'm sitting there in awe. Again, this is all 30, 40 seconds. And I'm sitting there going, what am I watching? As I get closer, I get, again, I don't know what I look like, by the way, in this. I'm just getting closer, whether I'm walking, floating, who knows. Two of the grays turn to look at me, and I jump out. I'm like, wait, can they see me? And I jump out, right? That I've told that story so many times because it was one of the first times I realized when I'm in this space, whatever else occupies this space, if you can see them and make some kind of eye contact, they can see you. And there's something that can happen. So the answer to your question with an anecdote is absolutely. And I've seen other things in this space that don't pay attention, right? So you sit there and you're like, wow, that's some kind of alien. I've never seen it before. And they're not interested in you. You know, there's not like some people call themselves star seeds, communicate with them. That's not what typically happens with me. I just kind of look and see and observe, and I've seen many things over the years.
Well, since you are seeing these beings, are they actual living beings or are they holograms or robots themselves?
Well, here's my thought on that now, and this could change next month. Just like I'm a living being and I'm in this space, I think they may in fact be somewhere else, and I don't want to use the word shadow, maybe reflection, or some part of them is in this space, right? That's what I want to say. So I do think they're living. Now, I think grays in particular are organic / some kind of technology, maybe nanotechnology. So yeah, I do think they're non-human intelligence. Well, let me just say that too, because I've written about this. They're non-human intelligence that are terrestrial, that are in this space with us. But there's a word called umwelt. Umwelt is the way a biological organism navigates their world, right? You and I are on planet Earth, and we're humans. We share the space with birds, worms, cats, bats. We all share this environment, the Earth's environment. The way you and I see the world is completely different than the way a worm sees it. It's got one, feels it. So we see much more of it. We've got 5 senses, or however many you want to call it, and they've got one, however, what a feeling is. There's other things that see, even though we're on the same environment, they see more than we do. My umwelt evolved. The way I saw the world before, right after my brain rewired and opened up, and the way I see it now has changed. If this would have happened when I was a kid, I don't know what I would have done. I would have lost my mind. Well, I mean, I did lose my mind, but I came back from that. That was partly because of the drugs, right? But I mean, it's just, you're seeing so much more. So, and I know I know other people can see it too. Like I said, people have come forward saying they're seeing things like this, or some people feel it. There's different ways they experience this hidden biosphere. That's what I've landed on, hidden biosphere.
Since you were on last February, what has happened new?
So the biggest thing is that more people have come forward and saying they have it, right? And if you would have said to me last February, what's going to be the number one thread that drives the narrative of what disability is, I would have bet you money that it would be somebody using drugs, right? Whether it's DMT or something, and that's going to be the thread that connects all of us. Not using now, but using something and something open or changed in their brain. Guess what? That would have been wrong, and I would have lost the bet, because the number one thread is some kind of trauma, right? Every person, maybe there's one person, maybe two, that said they didn't have any. And my skeptical mind is like, well, maybe it happened when they were a kid. These are people I've actually talked to. Everyone else, to a man, had some physical, mental, emotional, or personal trauma in their life. And during that time or soon after, this ability evolved in them. So that is a data point that I've learned since then. And the other one is, I talked about it, the fact that everyone emits this, right? It's like they call the cosmic background radiation. We all emit this. Some degree or another. You have to pay attention. You have to have the ability to pick it up. But I don't know if you want to call it like I don't know what you call it, because there's no name for it, but they radiate it. How about that? Radiate.
What kind of advice would you have for people about exploring their own consciousness as well as expanding their own perceptual ability?
You can explore this place, and it's a safe place. It is not scary. Now, let me pause there and say this too. Sometimes when you are looking in this space, and I get this on every podcast I do, they're demons, they're devils, they're evil. This is why I say they're not those things. They're evil in the same way a moth has a snake, the shape of a snake's head on its back, to make you think that's what it is. Right? If I stay with any of these things I look at, their vision, their image disappears. Like, it could be a horned demon, right? I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the devil, right? There's no evil there. They look like that, but I don't know why. If they want humans to scare us, to think something, I don't know. But I know this: if you stick with that, that will go away if you feel like you're protected with light. But there was something else I was getting. Sometimes you see horrible things too, like gross things. And if that happens, or even with this whole demon thing, just stop doing it. You don't have to do it. So that's the negative side. On the positive side, there's also you can radiate feelings of light, right? You can feel really good connected to this source, whatever this is. And you could see some really beautiful, awe-inspiring things. And when this happens to you, if you can do this and change this image with a thought, you are going to feel like a superhero. You're going to be like, wow, I have this ability that is unusual, and nobody knows how to do it, or very few people. And it makes you feel really good. It makes you feel, like I say, connected to something that is concerned about you, that you can play with. And I will say play, because there's a form of play with this, right? And it's as awe-inspiring as looking out at the Grand Canyon or looking at a sunset. It is that much fun. But I would say, if you want to connect with me, download my PDF. Right? If you want to connect with me, because slowly, like I said, I've got 1,700 names. I eventually, not right away, I don't want to make any promises, maybe the end of this year, I'm going to be teaching how to get better at this, right? Every time I do this, somebody asks me to teach it. I will say this: even though I think I can teach it, or I'm starting to think about the curriculum around that, teaching this is the same like as teaching singing. Everybody maybe can sing, but everybody can't be Adele. Everybody can't bring Frank Sinatra, right? So I think people have different capacity genetically, and they can hone it, but only up to a point. And again, it's so new, I don't even know what those points are, right? All I know is everyone that's reached out to me has it to some degree or another.
I know you have a PDF file about this on your website, but can you briefly give us an overview of the 8 stages of UPSIGHT?
Let me attach on a couple of them. I don't want to go through all of them, okay? But the first one is realizing that we're connected, that the world that we know is not as it seems, right? I had to completely collapse from my mental construct of the world as we knew it. I had to completely collapse, right? So kind of like a mental breakdown. Now, I don't think you need to have a mental breakdown. What I think you need to do is take a step back and say, wait a minute, the world isn't what it seems, right? Now, unfortunately, a lot of times that companies a mental breakdown. You're like, wait a minute, this is nonsense, right? The world is not as it seems. That was the first stage, right? For me, the second stage was escape. I had to get away from everything I knew. Literally just turn my back on it. And for me, literally, it was running away from my successful business. Then I had to kind of get in this place where did this personal forgiveness thing. Now, because I was so mad at the world for not being what I wanted it to be, right? So I forgave this overwhelmed feeling of forgiveness I had, and it just went away. After that, you start opening up where the cracks are, as they say, opening up to things that are coming in and realizing that the things are coming in are not, even though they may be scary at first and they may be a little bit troubling, that maybe they're there to guide you. The synchronistic moments were huge in that stage, right? The synchronicity was out of bounds. And then realizing that you, in fact, can see these holographic images, first part, this is, then you can see them and influencing them after that, right? Not only influence, have a conversation, there's an intelligence behind them. So there's a communication element to it. And then after the seeing, having a influencing communication, realizing there's also this knowledge, and I use my math example, this Rouliard, this Cartesian coordinate system, there's a knowledge there. And I think that is all personal to each of us, right? And the reason each of us is getting that is for a reason. For whatever the personal reason is. Now, those are the specific things. After that, I think you can have enlightenment. This is not enlightenment. I want to be really clear on that. This is not enlightenment at all. This is opening an additional sense, or this sort of feels like that can help us find this enlightenment, maybe help us guide us to get there. This is about communication, hands down. Whether you want to call it communication with higher self, communication with this hidden biosphere, and I think ultimately communication with each other. I know, Jeff, at some point, someone else with UPSIGHT, we can be in the same room and we can have a nonverbal communication with these holographic images. I say I know that. I don't know that. I believe that. That is a belief. That has not happened yet. That is a very strong belief that's pulling me forward with all of this.
Sounds like to me that this is basically a sixth sense of perception that you have, and you just haven't mapped it out yet or figured out how to put it to use.
That's a great way to do it. I'm literally learning as I go. There's a religious and UFO scholar teacher, Diane Pasulka. Have you ever had Dr. Diane Pasulka?
I haven't. I know of her.
Okay, well, I took a class from her a couple of years ago, and I sent her an email. I said, listen, can you tell me if there's any history, whether it's religious, UFO, or whatever, UAPs, about somebody doing this? And do you know anybody who's seen holographic images? She said she's found nothing, right? I say this on every show. This is new, right? Now, not 100% new. Finally, somebody sent me a link to a scholar in Muslim or some guy way back 400 years that maybe he did the same type of thing. But whatever it was, it is not common. Now, so yes, the answer to piggyback on what you said, I am figuring out as I go. And the more of us that connect on this and figure it out together, the more brains you have around something, the better, the bigger advances we're going to make. The fact that IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, is involved with this is really a big deal. They've got a blog on it. The paper's coming out any day now. I don't know what don't remember the academic journal it's under, but it's under a preprint. You can find that on my website. What the preprint is around my brain states when the EEG study we did, but they wrote a blog on it. And when the paper comes out, because obviously academics, they want that peer review paper before they take it to the next conversation. When that happens, I think hopefully it's going to get some more attention from the broader press. More people will come forward. And it won't be, oh my God, my mother told me I had this when I had this when I was a kid. My mother told me not to talk to anybody about it. Can I share one more anecdote, Jeff?
Of course.
Okay. This is really cool. This is about a woman who heard about me on a podcast and she reached out to me. She wrote a Reddit story 5 years ago about when she was a little girl. She used to hang out with her friend and they were good friends, her friend has since moved away and they lost touch, but they connected again. Well, anyway, they were like 10 or 11 years old. They were having a sleepover at the one girl's house, and the one girl said to her friend, she goes, do you ever see these things that nobody else can see, floating in front of us? And her friend said, you mean like the two fishes that are floating in the air now? And she's like, wait, you can see that too? So they both saw these same things that I think I'm talking about. And she sent this link to me on the Facebook page. And so they had that experience, right? Her friend moved away. They became grown-ups. She had this ability went away when she went through puberty or early 20s. I think maybe both, obviously. And her friend remembered it. So I think this might be an innate ability in some of us that we just don't, I don't know if you want to say suppress, we just don't work on it. We don't nurture it. All those things are true. But I think if we do again, it's going to serve us because it is about connection and it is about, being connected to other people. Again, the telepathy tapes, if you want to talk about that, those guys have a place they go to called the Hill they communicate on, but yeah.
Do you ever see geometric shapes like sacred geometry?
Yeah, that's the thing. The things I see, this thing that I've built are the sacred geometry, but here's what's really wild, Jeff. All the platonic solids or any shape that I've ever seen in any math publication, they do not look like the thing that I see. That's what makes this thing unique too. It exists maybe it's dark matter, whatever this field is that I'm seeing, this shape exists there only, right? And it's almost like, it kind of like, it's not like this, but everyone knows this, the shell, the nautilus, right? The ratio, the golden ratio. It's not that, but it evolves like that. So that's kind of fun. That's something so the answer is yes, I do.
Can you ever look upwards at the sky and see things that may look like grid lines or some sort of machinery that circles the earth?
So yeah, another great question. I do not see grid lines. I see, let's say we are in a matrix. I don't see the grid lines. I see whatever is radiating out from them. And for me, it's supposed to be, it's these holographic images that form shapes, right? So the original question, or one of the big questions is, where are these images originating, right? Where are the original ones? So let's say the fact that I can produce some of them obviously are coming from other people and are just floating around, but they're not all like that, right? Obviously the geometric shapes are not, I say obviously, probably not are coming from other people. So I don't know if there is a grid around this invisible grid or dark matter grid or whatever it is, but it got to be coming from somewhere. And I have to believe if we get enough brains on this, we could triangulate this message, right? If we get 2 or 3 of us to do this, we should be able to triangulate where this message is coming from. I say that wishful thinking, like any kind of satellite. We want to take it back to the source. And assuming, this is really funny, Jeff, because you say looking up, right? And there's an element of looking up, but it's also coming in. There's a quantum smallness element to this that goes through me, right? This really important to say that. Really important to say that. If I shut my eyes, this like thing swells, it shrinks and shrinks and it comes through me almost. And sometimes like imagine if I'm driving, if we're walking, it's on a track, things are coming this way past me. Elements are coming this way past me. And sometimes those elements are precog elements, precog things that are going to happen the next day. So I have this hypothesis that we're going regular gravity, we're going this way, even though it's falling, we're going this way, and the quantum gravity is coming this way through us. And that's why we have these precog abilities, because it's already been around the track. I could say more on that later, but because it's a discussion that needs images and pictures and stuff like that. But that is what I see. I could say more on that. I could draw it. but that is what I see.
Well, you mentioned that you have a book out about this. What is the
So wait,
title
let's
of
be
it?
clear. Yeah, good. It's not about this. Jesus Goes to Hollywood. You're talking about my memoir? So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Jesus Goes to Hollywood, a memoir of madness. Now that book is a book I wrote when I came out of my addiction and mental health crisis. It's really about the 1 year that I lost my mind and was very, very unwell. I walked out on my business. I walked out on my family. I tried to set my house on fire. I spent all my money. I ended up in Skid Row. I ended up in jail. It was really bad. And that's the break I talk about earlier. That was in 2012. So the book is not about upside vision. The book, the memoir, is about the hell that I went through going through all the stories and the unbelievable things that I should not be alive now, but thank God I am, getting my family back together and beginning the journey of looking for the right science team to study what's happened with my brain. So that's really what that book is about. You can see you can get it on Amazon. It's available on Amazon. You can read some of the reviews. It's a really quick read. But if somebody is going through something and they think the person they're going through it has no hope or is kind of manifesting some psychotic and delusional thoughts, this might be the book for them. Because we really didn't talk about this in the beginning, Jeff. I was psychotic. I would have a thought and I would think it was true, right? So that's where it's like let's say I would read an article, local sheriff shoots, troublemaking kids. And the next article is like, woman has an affair. In my mind, I'd be like, my local sheriff has an affair. And I think it was my wife, and I was just delusional. Obviously, it was partly drug induced, but there was some other element going on. There was an unwellness. Long story short, more time without drugs, more time, whatever, what's the word? Whatever filter broke in my brain, rehooked, connected, and I don't have psychotic thoughts anymore. There's going to be somebody watching this saying, well, he's still crazy because he sees this. I've had that for every year. I know that's not true. My family knows that's not true, but these images are there and it's extraordinary. I mean, I'm blessed.
When you first started seeing neurologists about this, did they think you were crazy or did they take you seriously?
Well, I told him my history. Listen, I told him everything. And I was like, and it's slowly over time. That's why I had 2 MRIs, right? Because there was no drugs. The second time I had the MRI, it was 3 years after no drugs, right? That was 2015. And that's when I was like, okay, there's something really bad going on. There's going to be a tumor pressing against this, and it's using the vision to ocular changes, whatever. No, no, and that's when I got extremely frustrated with them not having answers. Right? I was like, you don't know how graphic detailed this is. You don't understand. I could see the cutaway of a Porsche 911 with every single component of the car. I could see the side of a human body with all the organs and stuff like that. It is one color, it's tinted, but I can still see it. There's got to be where I ask them, where is this coming from? That you've got to have answers for me. They don't have any answers. This is outside the realms of and I understand that, right? I understand it's outside the realms of clinical well-being, but it's still happening and it's extraordinary and it's freaking cool, to be honest with you.
Some people are able to mix perceptions, like as if they can taste colors or hear colors or something like that. And I wonder if something in your brain got rewired where now you have a vision of your subconscious mind.
Well, I looked into it a lot too. And the reason that the people I talked to about this say that's probably not it is because that's uncontrolled, right? You can't control that. You smell the number 3 and you see red or whatever, or what are you? You see 3 and you think of red or smell cookies. That's uncontrolled. Mine is you can completely control it. I am in complete control. You know what I mean? I say complete control. I told you can't hold them for a long time, but for the 30 seconds, I am in control of the conversation. Now, do I think it's related to it? I mean, I'm probably, right? People that have those kind of symptoms usually have some other neurodivergent ability as well. They're usually really good at artists or something like that. And again, I don't know. I don't know. I talked to neuroscientists. I talked to famous neuroscientists. I can't call their name about it. I've been on calls with them, and nobody has any answers. Nobody has any answers.
Well, how did you get hooked up with the Institute of Noetic Sciences?
Great question. I emailed a bunch of, most people ignore me. Most people say, thank you, this isn't what we do. Dean Radin, right, the OG of sci-abilities, emailed me back and he said, well, this is very interesting, but we typically don't study one individual person. So, and I gave him a complete layout of all the things. And I said, well, what about this? And he said, well, tell you what, this is very, very interesting. Let me put it to the science team and we'll get back to you. So they put it to the science team. He handed off to Garrett Yount. He's a science director there. We got on a couple of calls. He's like, you know what, this is something we could get our heads around. So I talked to them and their PhD students or whatever they have, and they came up with a protocol of what we would test, how we would test it. And I got to tell you, it was a really good baseline test of what this is, right? We're comparing brain waves, not using UPSIGHT with using UPSIGHT. It's actually a really well thought out first test around this ability. And to also know that it's coming from outside, you know, and to that point too, my eyes dilate, right? My eyes dilate when I do this. My eyes get tired, like looking at a movie. And there's something called smooth pursuit eye movement. If I'm going to follow something across a wall, if you're faking it, your eyes jump. If I'm actually following a holographic leopard going across the savannah, do leopards go across the savannah? Whatever. Anyway, I'll follow it, and if I'm actually watching it, it's smooth. So there's ways. Those are the ways we knew it was external, right? And so Dean Radin, they were very interested in the sci-ability of it, and since then they've, you know, I've gone to a bunch of events with them and stuff like that, and we're continuing. We're talking about what we're going to do next, even though this still needs to have the first publication come out in the journal.
Well, besides them, what are you going to do next?
Well, I'm talking to podcasters. I'm trying to find other people that have it. I would love to get at some point have an UPSIGHT, I don't want to say convention, a meetup for people in some location. Maybe that's going to happen this year. I know I'm going to do readings, you know, as kind of like an offering. I'm definitely going to do that because I think it can help people with the unconscious, right? I think if somebody's struggling, if there's a business owner that's struggling with making a decision and they want to invest some money for me to help them go through this, like I went through it, I'm all open to that. And this is, like I said, this is just new. So we're going to have some data points there helping people out. But it's an ever evolving thing. It is an ever evolving thing.
If someone thinks that they have this, how do they reach out and connect with you?
You download my PDF, go to my website, right? Will you have a link?
Well, what's your website?
It's tom-matte.com. It's not underlined, it's tom-matte.com. On there is a PDF, a free PDF, right? Download the PDF and you will be instantly on a mailing list. That's all you need to do, okay? And then when I send out, and I haven't even sent out one mailer yet. When I send out the next mailer, I'll reach out to you and I'll tell you what's happening next, if I'm doing an event or something like that. Now there's an email on there for podcasters to talk to me about going on their shows and stuff. If you want to, you can send me something there. I don't know if I'll respond because sometimes I get hundreds of emails and I don't know what I could do is say if you want to tell me you have it, that's great, you know. But those are the ways you can reach out to me. And of course, if you want, buy the book. Might as well plug the book. It's an entertaining read.
Well, how did you come up with that title?
Because I thought I was Jesus for a very short time. That was the psychotic and the delusional part, right? I opened up and synchronistically, I literally poured out a drink, goes something like this. I'm in treatment. I'm no drugs around. This is how I knew I was still psychotic for a short period of time. I'm in a treatment center in Antigua, and I pour like fruit punch out on the ground, and the splashes on the rocks and lands on my sandals because I was in the islands. I opened to a Bible verse, and it was something to the effect of, they poured out the blood and it splashed on the rocks and hit the sandals. Something like that. For me to, in my mental state, to think, I'm like, okay, I'm Jesus. That's how unwell I was. But it was, even now, it's a kind of creepy synchronistic moment, right? To turn to that thing. But, and this is really, really important for anybody that might be struggling now. The negative synchronistic moments, when I was really down, like if you're in an addiction and you're down, and having a hard time, those, upon hindsight, sobriety, looking back, those things helped me. They were little pieces of light, even though it didn't feel like it, to help me guide my way to get out of that horrible place, even though it didn't feel like it at the time. This is almost like I've heard it described as God winks at you, right? When you feel like crap, you don't want God to wink at you. You want to be left alone or whatever. But it's letting you know that there's something has your back, whatever your higher power is. Yes, so that's why, because I thought I was Jesus for a very short time. That bar was way too high. Let's be clear, it was way too high. But for a minute.
Tom, before we wrap it up, can you leave us with a last positive message?
Yeah, we are meant for more. And I know the world is going through a crazy time. Pole shifts, forever chemicals, non-human intelligence, UAPs. Maybe some people think the world is politically, maybe because it is crazy at this time, because it is. There is hope. And I think there's a higher thing for all of us to connect and be our better selves. And for me, this is pointing to that. And I think for the other people that I've connected with, and maybe for you too.
Tom, thank you for your message, and thank you for being my guest again.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching the JeffMara podcast. I really appreciate you. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. And if you do, there are loyalty badges and other perks depending on your level of membership. All you need to do is click the join button underneath the video to find out more. Thank you for your support.